People often think that gourmet steaks equal a gourmet price tag, but that's simply not the case all the time. Budget does not define flavor, cooking technique does. Today I'm gonna run you through two of my favorite steak dishes, and with each of them, I'm gonna have two different cuts of meat, one a more affordable piece of meat and one quite expensive piece of meat. And then I'm going to show the difference between each and talk through the pros and cons. Nevertheless, all these steaks and dishes are going to be delicious, and I'm going to explain why you may lead one way or another. So will the affordable steaks rise to the occasion? Spoiler alert, probably. A huge thank you to Australia Beef for sponsoring this video, but let's get stuck in. The first dish I'm going to run you through is steak à pois, a classic French dish and one of my absolute favorites. It's effectively steak that's crusted in peppercorns, and then we make a pan sauce with some demi-glaze, some cream, and a little bit of brandy. So traditionally, this is done with fillet, and this is the fillet that I've chosen to do it with today. This is a Marble Score 9 Wagyu fillet. This is $200 a kilo. That's expensive. Some people are going to say this is sacrilege to do this dish with the piece of Wagyu because you're kind of masking the flavor of the Wagyu, with the peppercorns and the heavy meat sauce. But I think that it does add value. You're going to have a really juicy piece of fillet, because one of my biggest arguments against this cut of meat, the fillet, and I'm not saying I hate fillet, I love fillet. One of my biggest arguments against it is that sometimes, unless you're kind of cooking this rare, medium rare, it can dry out because of the lack of fat. The Wagyu and the intramuscular fat in this one makes up for that. The other steak that we're going to cook is this here, which is actually one of my favorite cuts of steak. This is called a ribeye or a rib fillet or a cube roll, a few different names. This is a grass-fed product. This is about $50 a kilo, so it's a quarter of the price of the fillet. Nowhere near as much intramuscular fat, but we do have this nice eye of fat here, and then the spinalis muscle is probably the tastiest muscle on the animal, I think. And I think it's a great option for doing a steak with peppercorn sauce or a steak à pois like we're doing today. And a quick tip, go and talk to your butcher. Your local butcher is the best source of knowledge for this stuff, for what they've got available, to suit your budget, to see how many people you're cooking for, because sometimes it's cheaper to buy this stuff in bulk, as in buy a whole cube roll like this and then cut it up yourself, as opposed to buying individual steaks. So they're a wealth of knowledge. Go to your local butcher, talk to them, they'll help you out heaps. Before we start cooking the steaks, let's talk about French fries. So here's a quick recap on how I like to make chips at home. Start with a floury potato like a russet or a sebago, and you're gonna cut them into chips roughly 1 centimeter square for French fries. Then you're gonna place them into cold water with a big pinch of salt and a couple of tablespoons of white vinegar or apple cider vinegar, it doesn't really matter. You're gonna bring it to a boil, and once it's boiling, you're gonna simmer them for another 3 to 4 minutes or until the potatoes are just cooked. Remove them from the water, drain them really well, pat them dry, and let them get to room temperature. Once they're at room temp, you're gonna fry them for the first time at 160 degrees Celsius until they're a nice light blonde color, set on the outside and fully cooked through. Let them get to room temperature again, and you can even store these in the fridge overnight until you're ready to cook them the next day. So to get these steaks ready, I've got a carbon steel pan or a cast iron pan will work well over a medium-high heat, just heating up. We want this pan hot, we don't want it ripping hot, if that makes sense. Drizzle our steaks in the oil. So this here is actually peanut oil, which I like to use for my steaks, but if you've got someone with a nut allergy, you obviously can't use peanut oil. The reason we're using so much oil, even on the Wagyu, is because we need it as the binder. Now we're gonna season them with salt, all sides. And then we want our pepper really coarse. We want nice big pieces of pepper. If you don't have a really good pepper grinder, I suggest that you use a mortar and pestle and some whole peppercorns. So lots of pepper. Pat that on there. I can see my pan is whispering with smoke. That means it is ready. Just gonna turn that down so we don't overheat the pan. Rub it into all that seasoning over here. Wash my hands quickly. Now for people who've been following me a while and paying a little bit of attention, you'll know that I generally never put pepper on my steaks, but for this dish, you kind of have to. If you don't do it, it's not steak à pois. So we've got that pan, it's nice and hot. I'm gonna turn that temperature up again. We are gonna add more fat. It's important that we have enough fat at the bottom of that pan so that it completely covers. You can see there, nice little whispers coming out there. You might not be able to see that, but I can see it. So I know that that pan is hot enough. Seal the outsides first. The temperature, I'm shooting for a medium rare, so I'm gonna pull these out at 46, 47 degrees Celsius, and they'll carry over cooking while they're resting. So once our steaks are on the side that we want to present, that didn't make sense. The side we want them on the plate first, so the presentation, why can't I not say that word? Presentation side, we're gonna add a little weight to it. What the weight does, make sure that steak is in complete contact with the bottom of that pan, giving us a better Maillard reaction. After about 45 seconds, we're gonna flip. So the grass-fed's actually cooking slightly faster than the Wagyu, and they're about the same thickness, which is kind of interesting. I've flipped those 3 times now. We can leave the press off now. That's done its job. Now traditionally, I'm pretty sure the French would just leave all this fond at the bottom of the pan, and I'm usually a big fan of it. However, in this case, I'm not. Why? Because of all this burnt pepper. So the fond I'm happy with, but all this burnt pepper, I don't really want in my sauce. So we're gonna wipe a bit of it out. You don't want that in your sauce, as far as I'm concerned. So I've got that pan back on a low temperature. I'm gonna add about 20 grams of butter there. I don't want that to burn, so that pan is still pretty hot. I'm actually gonna turn that off. We just want that butter to melt, and then I'm gonna add some more pepper that's not burnt. So the butter's melted and our fresh pepper has been nicely toasted. I'm gonna add some green peppercorns. You can find these in most supermarkets now, and if you can't, just leave them out and just add more fresh black pepper. Give those a little toast. Turn the temperature back up on your pan. You're gonna be really fast here, otherwise you don't want that butter to burn. You want a bit of heat in your pan, so we're gonna add brandy now, which is gonna flambe. Don't panic, Mitchell. It's gonna be fire.
Classic YouTube chef. Do the fire thing.
Do the fire thing. So burn all that alcohol off, and then we're gonna add our demi-glaze. Link above for a demi-glaze recipe. And if you don't want to make your own beef stock and chicken stock and then reduce it down to make demi-glaze, just buy some good quality beef stock from your butcher and reduce that down by 2/3 to 1/4. Now sauce should thicken slightly, and then once we're at the right consistency, we're gonna just let it down with a little bit of double cream. I also haven't added any salt yet. There should be a fair amount of salt left in this pan from those steaks. Doesn't need any. Maybe a little bit at the end once we put the cream, but we'll taste it then. Now tip, you really want to reduce the sauce here right down before you add your cream. Otherwise, you're gonna have a sauce that's too runny. You want something with a bit of viscosity to it. This is what we're looking for, nice, thick sauce before we add our cream. Heat off, cream in, and mix that through. And there's our peppercorn sauce. It's pretty good. Just a little pinch of salt. Gonna let that steak rest a couple more minutes. Our sauce is ready. We can heat that up gently when we're ready. Let's go fry these chips for the last time. When it's time to serve, crank your oil up to 185 degrees Celsius and cook your chips for another 5 to 6 minutes until they're golden brown, crispy, and perfectly cooked through. Remove from the oil, and there you go, delicious French fries at home. All right, do love a chippy. Season with salt. Make sure you taste your food. All right. Good chippies today. Pile them high. A puff sauce or peppercorn sauce. Lots of. The grass-fed ribeye first. Oh, that's really good. Steak eats really well. It's tender, even though it didn't have all that intramuscular fat. It's juicy. It's got a great crust. And that sauce is delicious. Well, let's see what the Wagyu's like. 4 times the price per kilo. It's cooked nicely, well rested. Oh, okay. Very different flavor. Not in a bad way at all, in a good way. In a good way that they both taste delicious, but there's definitely a difference in flavor here. You know, you can taste that extra fat into the muscle that's coating your mouth nicely, but a completely different flavor profile. That's a tough one, because honestly, they both work really well. And I'm not just saying that. What would I choose? Honestly, I don't know. If you can afford it, sure, cook it with the Wagyu. I know a lot of the purists out there are gonna be upset that I covered that in that sauce and didn't, you know, like just treat it really delicately. But man, you can taste the difference in that. But it's a very different flavor profile to that. Some people, especially maybe some people of the older generation, would definitely prefer the grass-fed because that's what they're more used to, especially here in Australia, and I'm assuming probably in the States as well. So there is no right or wrong in this. I honestly encourage you, go talk to your butcher, do some experiments like this. Cook them next to each other and see what one you prefer. Because for me, some days I'm gonna choose that, and some days I'm gonna choose that. Sorry that I can't give you a more definitive answer. Yum. All right, next up, another one of my, I can't stop eating chippies. Another one of my favorite beef dishes of all time, a Thai beef salad. Let's talk about the steaks we're going to use today. We've got two of my absolute favorites. On this side, we have a Wagyu Marble Score 6 ribeye, also known as a Scotch fillet in some places, a rib fillet in some places, a cube roll, lots of different names. Delicious cut of meat, got a big eye of fat here, the spinalis muscle on the outside. Stunning. It's expensive though. This was $130 a kilo in the butcher. On this side, we have one of my favorite steaks of all time and one of the most underrated steaks in the Western world, or in Australia and the US especially. This here is called a flank steak. It's also known as a bavette in France. The French love these things. Why? Because they're full of flavor. They're super delicious, but we've got to cook this carefully or it does become tough. You can see these really long strands of muscle here. So we've got to definitely make sure we cut it against the grain and we can't overcook the steak. But this stuff is super affordable. It's like $25 a kilo in your butcher. And this is why I always bang on about going and talking to your butcher, because you're not gonna find that in your supermarket. You will only find cuts of meat like this in your local butcher, and not only steaks, but all different cuts of meat. And then what else do we need for this delicious salad? And one of the reasons I love Vietnamese and Thai food is the use of herbs, and it makes these salads vibrant and alive and, you know, zingy and all those delicious things. The two main herbs that we're gonna need that are kind of non-negotiables as far as I'm concerned is mint, just your standard mint, and just your standard coriander, picked and washed. Any other kind of Asian herb you want, you can kind of put in the salad. So here I've got what's called Vietnamese mint most of the time. It's quite peppery, quite strong, go easy on that stuff, but it is delicious and it does add another level of flavor. And then here is Thai basil. Thai basil is pretty common now in Australia. It's got a real strong aniseed flavor. Again, it's not spicy, but go easy on it. Definitely bulk your greens out with the coriander or the mint and just use sparingly these other two herbs. Unless you really enjoy it, then knock yourself out. Put as much as you want on. The only other thing we need is some finely sliced shallots. Now, these are not onions, they're shallots. They got quite a more subtle flavor. You can eat them raw quite easily. You know, peel them and cut them nice and thin. Some cherry tomatoes sliced in half. Then we need a couple of limes for the zestiness, some palm sugar, fish sauce, some dark soya sauce, and then the toasted jasmine rice. So I've got some jasmine rice here into a pan, turn that on, and I'm gonna add a couple of kaffir lime leaves. And that's gonna give a lovely fragrance to that rice. We're just gonna toast this until it goes nice and golden brown. And while that's toasting, we can marinate our steaks. Marinade is super simple. Palm sugar, we're just gonna grate, just because we need it nice and fine. If you can't find palm sugar, brown sugar works just as well. To the palm sugar, fish sauce. So for this amount of steaks, I'm gonna use about 3 tablespoons of fish sauce, 1 tablespoon of dark soya. This is black soya sauce. This is a Thai version of black soya sauce. If you can't get your hands on the Thai version, you can use kicap manis, the Indonesian version, or even just a dark kind of Chinese soya sauce. Worth noting, the dark Chinese soya sauce and the kicap manis, or this one, are quite a different flavor profile. This one and kicap manis are a lot sweeter. So you might need to up your palm sugar if that's the case. Stir that around. Keep an eye on your rice. We're trying to look for a nice even golden color. So you can do this a couple of ways, nice and low and you don't have to worry about it so much, or you can have it nice and hot, but you're gonna make sure, keep your eye on it and you don't burn it. All right, pour that over our steaks. Make sure they're evenly covered. You could also do this in a small Tupperware and leave it in the fridge for a few hours ahead of time, or you can just do it like I'm gonna do it and it'll just sit at room temperature for half an hour. So we'll talk about grilling more so when we're out at the grill. But because there is sugar in this marinade, we've got to be careful, otherwise we're going to get very charred outside a lot quicker than we're looking for. Cool, that can just hang out there. I'm going to wash my hand. I'm happy with the color of that rice. It's nice and, excuse me, golden. I just tasted a piece, got stuff in my mouth. heat off. I'm just gonna roll it around this pan for the pan to lose a bit of its heat. If you leave it in there, it's probably gonna burn. I'm gonna place it in our mortar and pestle. I'm just gonna leave it there to cool down before we start pounding it and grinding it. So while we're waiting for that to cool, let's go grill this beef. So we've got a nice hot grill here. We're only gonna grill it for a few minutes each side because we want these, especially the flank, nice and rare. I'm gonna let our meat rest really well because it's pretty rare. So while that's resting, we're gonna ground our toasted rice. There you go, that's what we're looking for. It's not super fine, still got some texture, but no kind of big bits of rice left. So to pull the salad together, it couldn't be simpler. Like I was saying, heavy on the herbs, heavy on the mint, heavy on the coriander, some of the Thai basil, give it a tear, and the Vietnamese mint. Cherry tomatoes, shallots. I like shallots, so we're gonna go kind of heavy. We have our toasted rice. Forgot what rice was for a second there. Some chili flakes. You can just use ordinary chili flakes. This is like I think it's a Thai style chili flake. I think it's actually just whole ground chilies. It's quite spicy. I get it down at my local Asian grocer. Juice of 1 lime. And then a little bit of fish sauce and our steak. So we're gonna slice this nice and thin against the grain. Some nice manageable pieces. Looking good. So you're gonna put a fair amount of your steak for each salad in the bowl. We're gonna give it a toss nicely, and time to plate. I honestly think clean hands are the best tools for plating salads. It's tongs to squash things. So that, I just like to kind of build up a bit on the ingredients, make sure we can see a lot of the tomatoes, so that's good, but a couple of extra pieces of shallot, a couple of nice fresh pieces of coriander, a little sprinkle of chili, and then a couple of extra pieces of beef. There you go, Thai beef salad with the flank steak. I'll make the one with the ribeye, and then we'll taste and compare. Let's have a taste. Bit of extra lime. We're gonna start with the flank. Spicy. A, delicious salad. B, delicious steak. It's not chewy at all. You know, you got those nice small fibers because we cut it against the grain, and you can see that because you can literally pull it apart. That's yum. I love the salad. Let's try the Wagyu. Also delicious. Definitely a tender cut of steak. And the fattiness of the Wagyu is really nice in that really sharp, spicy, zesty salad. It actually works really well. You do lose a bit of that Wagyu flavor because there is a lot of, strong flavors in the salad. So they've both got their own pros and cons. For me, the flank, a pro is it's still tender, but it's super affordable, which means you can be more generous. With the Wagyu, pro is the fact that the fat level's a lot higher, which I think actually adds something to the salad. But you do kind of lose a bit of that Wagyu flavor just with all those other really powerful ingredients. But both a fantastic option. Look, if I'm gonna make the salad for my friends and family, I'm honestly gonna go for the flank in this scenario. I'd probably save my Wagyu steaks to eat as steaks. But if you've got the cash and you wanna spend it, it's not gonna be bad. It's actually gonna be delicious. And I think that fattiness of that Wagyu actually adds something really nice to the salad. So quick recap, if you're gonna buy some of those cheaper cuts of steak, like bavette, skirt steak, flat iron, oyster blade, which is another great one we didn't talk about today. Make sure you don't cook them over medium, even medium rare at best. If you're someone that likes your steak medium well, I would seriously suggest you go to a rump or something like that. And if you're gonna buy a Wagyu, then go talk to your butcher about what marble score suits what you're doing. Instagram's done a great job of selling Wagyu in the last few years. Us food creators love it because it's got a great wow factor, this big piece of highly marbled, super high score Wagyu. It's delicious in certain things, but you can't eat a lot of it. So if you're trying to eat a 300-gram steak, in my opinion, you don't want anything over kind of a marble score 6. And the only people that are gonna stock stuff like that is your local butcher. So go make friends with them and start buying your meat there. Anyway, legends, that was a fun one to make. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week for another video. And thanks again to Australian Beef for sponsoring this video. Peace.